My name is Lena Hartwell. I am 28 years old and I live in a studio apartment in Chicago with a window that faces east, so I get the sunrise every morning. I chose that apartment specifically for the sunrise. After 22 years of waking up in a house where the light never seemed to reach me, I needed to know the sun was there. The day my parents handed everything I had built to my brother was a Tuesday in May. Not a holiday, not a birthday, not any kind of occasion. Just a Tuesday. The azaleas in the front yard were blooming, I remember that, pink and white and absurdly cheerful while my world was collapsing on the other side of the kitchen window. I had just gotten the email an hour before I drove home. Subject line, congratulations. Conditional offer of employment. Whitmore and Associates, one of the top urban planning firms in the Midwest, was offering me a junior analyst position. Salary, benefits, a start date in July. I had applied 4 months ago, on a long shot. I had done 3 rounds of interviews. I had not told anyone in my family because telling them things meant watching those things get minimized or redirected into a conversation about my brother. I drove home that afternoon planning to tell them at dinner. I had even stopped at the bakery on Parkside Avenue and bought a small chocolate cake. It felt silly, celebrating alone, and I thought, maybe this is the moment. Maybe this is the thing that finally makes them see me. I should have kept driving. I walked in through the side door and heard my mother on the phone in the kitchen. She was laughing, that bright, performative laugh she only used when she was deeply pleased about something. I set the bakery box on the counter. She didn't look at me. She held up one finger, the universal signal for I'm busy and you can wait. I waited. She hung up and turned to me with pink cheeks. She looked happier than I had seen her in months. Your father and I have made a decision, she said, about the house fund. The house fund. I had been contributing to it for 3 years. It was my idea, actually. When my parents started struggling with the mortgage after my father's contractor business lost 2 big clients, I suggested we all put in something. I was making decent money waitressing and picking up freelance drafting work while I finished my master's degree. My brother, who was 2 years older than me, and had been living in the finished basement rent-free since he dropped out of his second college, contributed nothing. He was, according to my mother, between opportunities. I had put in $11,000 over 36 months. I had a spreadsheet. I had written records of every transfer. The fund is going to help your brother get his food truck started, my mother said. He found a truck. It needs work, but it's a real opportunity, Lena. We think this is the thing that finally gets him going. I stood there with the bakery box in my hands. The cake was chocolate with vanilla buttercream. The woman at the shop had put a little ribbon of fondant along the edge. That money was for the house, I said. It is for the family, my mother said, and he needs it more right now. He didn't put in a single dollar, I said. Her expression shifted. The pink happiness drained, and what replaced it was the look I had known my entire life. The look that said I was being difficult, selfish, that I didn't understand what it meant to love family. You always have to make things hard, she said. My father came in from the garage. He had grease on his hands and he was already nodding before I even spoke, which meant she had called him in advance. They had coordinated. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. They had planned it, discussed it, agreed on it, and then waited for me to come home so they could present it as settled fact. Your mother explained, he said. She explained, I said. Your brother has real potential here, Lena. A food truck in the Riverside district. That's good foot traffic. He's got ideas. He just needs a little runway. He needs $11,000 of my money as his runway, I said. Our money, my father said. You live here. You use this house. It's a family contribution. I had been paying them rent for 2 years. $400 a month, cash, which my mother said was just to help with utilities and groceries. I had thought of it as transitional. I was saving for my own place. I had a plan. I had a very specific, detailed, written plan. I put the bakery box on the kitchen table. I made a job, I said. I got an offer today. Urban planning firm in the city. I was going to tell you tonight. My mother blinked. Oh, well, that's good news. She didn't ask the name of the company. She didn't ask what the job was. She looked at the bakery box like she was trying to figure out what to do with it. We can celebrate both things, she said. Your job and your brother's new venture. My brother appeared in the doorway at that moment. He had heard, I could tell, because he had his self-satisfied walk, the slow amble of someone who knows the room has already been arranged in his favor. He was 30 years old. He had dropped out of the University of Michigan after one semester, then enrolled in a community college culinary program, then dropped that too. In the years since, he had worked a series of jobs that lasted between 3 and 8 months each, leaving each one with an explanation that always painted him as the victim of unreasonable bosses, jealous coworkers, or unfair circumstances. My parents had funded all of it. A photography course, a certification program, a period where he was supposedly developing an app. None of it led anywhere, but my parents never stopped believing that the next thing would be the real thing. Hey, he said to me, grinning. Heard you got a job offer. Good for you. He was not being cruel the way some people are cruel, with sharpness and intent. He was being the more exhausting kind of cruel, casual, comfortable, entirely unaware that anything was wrong. He genuinely did not see a problem. The money was available. He needed it. In his mental universe, that was sufficient. That's my money, I said quietly. He shrugged. Mom said it was the family fund. I looked at my parents. My father was studying the floor. My mother was opening the bakery box. Chocolate, she said. Oh, how nice. I want the money returned, I said. Nobody replied. My mother cut a slice of cake. My brother sat down at the kitchen table and picked up his phone. That night, I lay in my childhood bedroom and looked at the glow-in-the-dark stars I had stuck to the ceiling when I was 9 years old. Some of them had fallen off. There were pale yellow patches where the adhesive had left marks. I had not redecorated this room since I was 12 because redecorating felt like accepting permanence in a place I had always been trying to escape. I thought about the $11,000. I thought about the 36 months of transfers. I thought about every time I had skipped a trip or passed on something I wanted because I was building towards something stable. I thought about my brother downstairs playing video games, completely unbothered, already planning what kind of equipment he would buy, with money he did not earn and had not asked permission to take. And then I stopped feeling angry. That's the strange part. The anger just drained away and left something colder and quieter underneath. I opened my laptop. I had options. I knew I had options because I had been quietly building them for 2 years. I had a folder on my desktop labeled Contingency. In it were the following things: a list of every bank account in my name, all transfers and deposits going back 4 years, a copy of my renter's rights in the state, a copy of the email chain from when my mother had first suggested the house fund, and my response, agreeing to contribute with specific language about the intended purpose. I also had an email I had drafted 6 months ago but never sent, to my former professor at University of Illinois, Dr. Renata Chowdhury, who now worked as a housing policy consultant and had once told me, if you ever need a reference or a connection, I am serious, call me. I didn't call her. I emailed her. I explained in 2 paragraphs what had happened with the fund. I didn't exaggerate. I gave her the numbers and the facts. I told her I had the Whitmore offer, but that I needed to move sooner than the July start date because I could no longer stay in my current living situation. I asked if she knew of any sublet options near the Loop or if she had contacts at any firms with earlier start dates. She replied at 11:52 p.m. She wrote, Lena, I was waiting for you to call. My neighbor is subletting her Wicker Park place starting June 1st. Furnished, reasonable rate. Also, Whitmore's HR director is a former student of mine. I'll make a call tomorrow morning. Don't let them do this to you. I read that last sentence 4 times. Don't let them do this to you. It was so simple. It was the most straightforwardly kind thing an adult had said to me in years, and I had to put the laptop down and look at the ceiling for a while. I did not sleep much that night. The next 3 weeks were the strangest of my life. I was living in 2 realities simultaneously. In one reality, I was the older daughter who came home for dinner and answered questions about the food truck permits and helped my mother find a repair shop that worked on commercial vehicles. I did this because I needed my parents calm and unaware. I needed them to think the storm had passed. In the other reality, I was methodically disassembling my life in that house. I opened a new bank account at a credit union across town. I redirected my direct deposit. I moved my emergency savings. I went to the library on 2 consecutive Saturdays and made copies of every document in the house that had my name on it, old tax returns, the original savings account my grandmother had opened for me when I was born, a savings bond that had been sitting in a kitchen drawer for 15 years that my parents didn't know still existed. I spoke to a tenant rights attorney for 30 minutes on the phone. Free consultation. She confirmed that because I had documented transfers to a named fund with documented purpose, I had a civil claim for the money. Not a criminal case, but a civil one. She said it would take time and I might spend more pursuing it than I would recover, but the option existed and my documentation was solid. I noted that in my contingency folder. I did not tell my brother. I did not tell anyone in that house. I told one person, my coworker Jessie from the drafting firm where I did freelance work. Jessie had grown up with a similar family dynamic. She called it a hierarchy of visibility, where certain people in the family are simply seen and others are not, and the unseen ones learn to make themselves useful to the ecosystem or risk being further ignored. She understood without me having to translate. She helped me move. It was a Saturday morning in late May. My parents were going to a flea market 2 towns over. They left at 8. My brother was asleep. He was reliably asleep until noon. I had staged the duffel bag the night before, tucked behind my laundry hamper. I moved quietly and deliberately. I didn't take everything because taking everything would have made it obvious. I took my clothes, my laptop, my external hard drive, every document folder, my grandmother's jewelry box, the savings bond from the kitchen drawer, and the photograph of myself at my graduate school graduation. The 5x7 in the silver frame that had been sitting on the bookshelf in the hallway, because my parents put it there for guests to see, and I had always found that both touching and absurd, that they displayed my accomplishment in the public area of the house, while the feeling of it never quite entered the private rooms. I took the photograph. Jessie was parked around the corner in her SUV. We loaded everything in under 20 minutes. As I walked out the side door for the last time, my brother was standing in the kitchen in his boxers, eating cereal and staring at his phone. He looked up when he heard my footsteps. "Going somewhere?" he said. "I'm moving out," I said. He laughed. "Now? Didn't Mom say you're helping with the truck launch next month?" "I'm not going to be here for the truck launch," I said. His expression shifted slightly, confused. "Did you tell them?" "I'm telling you," I said. "You can tell them." "I'm telling you," I said. "You can tell them." He put his spoon down. "Come on, Lena, you're overreacting. It was a family decision. You know how they are. You know if you push back, they just dig in more, so what's the point? It's easier to just go along with it and eventually they come around." He believed that. I could see it in his face. He genuinely believed that the correct response to being exploited by your own parents was to adjust your expectations downward and wait patiently for things to improve. He had been doing it his entire life. He had learned to want less. He had learned to accept the scraps of their approval and call it love and use it to justify every year he spent in that basement, not building anything. He wasn't a villain. He was a casualty. He was what happened when you were handed everything and therefore never learned how to want something for yourself badly enough to work for it. I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger, not satisfaction, something closer to grief, and then I closed the door on it. "I have to go," I said. "Take care of yourself." He opened his mouth to say something else and I walked out. The morning felt clean on my face. Jessie's engine was running. I got in the passenger seat and she didn't ask if I was okay. She had a coffee waiting for me in the cup holder and she pulled away from the curb and started driving, and I watched my street get smaller in the side mirror and then disappear. The Wicker Park sublet was everything the house had not been. Small, yes. 1 room and a galley kitchen and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. But it was mine. Dr. Chowdhury's neighbor had left a plant on the windowsill with a little note that said, "Feel free to water it or let it die. No judgment." I watered it. 2 weeks after I moved, I got the revised offer from Whitmore. Dr. Chowdhury's call had moved things up. They wanted me to start June 15th rather than July. The role had also been slightly adjusted based on a conversation with the hiring manager. They wanted me on a transit equity project that was starting earlier than planned. I sat in my small kitchen and read the offer letter 3 times. I said yes before I had finished reading. My mother called for the first time on the 4th day after I left. I saw her name on the screen and felt my chest tighten out of old habit. I answered because I wanted to hear what she would say. She didn't ask how I was. She asked where I had put the file with the truck repair estimates, because she'd been looking for it on the kitchen desk and couldn't find it. I don't have it, I said. I never had it. Are you coming home for your father's birthday? I haven't decided, I said. Another pause. Lena. Your brother is upset. He says you said something to him that was hurtful before you left. I told him I was moving, I said. That's all I said. He felt blindsided. I considered this for a moment. He can have that feeling, I said. That's okay. She made a sound that was half sigh, half something harder. You know, she said, your father and I have done everything for you children. We gave you everything. You took $11,000, I said. That I earned. That I contributed to a specific named purpose, and you redirected it without asking me. That is not, she started. I have the email chain, I said. I have the original message where you proposed the fund, and I agreed to contribute. I have all 36 months of transfer records. If you'd like to discuss it further, I'm open to that. But I'm not coming back to live there, and I'm not helping with the truck launch. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I never thought you'd be the one who would do this to us. Do what? I said. Move out? I'm 25 years old. She didn't answer that. I said goodbye gently. I meant it gently. I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't staging a scene. I was just no longer available. The truck launch happened in July. I knew because my aunt posted a photo on Facebook, a big orange food truck with my brother's name in vinyl lettering on the side. My parents grinning next to it. He looked proud. He looked genuinely uncomplicated, happy, and I looked at that photo for a while before I scrolled past it. 2 months later, the truck broke down. The repair cost more than they had anticipated. My brother called me on a Thursday evening. I let it ring. He called again on Saturday. I let that ring too. On the 3rd call, I answered. He didn't ask how I was either. He said, Mom and Dad are in a rough spot, Lena. The truck is out of commission and the repair shop wants $3,000 we don't have. I don't know what to do. I thought about the $11,000. I thought about the email chain. I thought about the 36 months. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. That sounds really stressful. I mean, can you help? He said. I thought of the attorney's advice, the civil claim, the documentation. I decided not to use it, not right then, because using it wasn't the point. The point was not winning. The point was knowing I could. I can't, I said. He was quiet. Why not? Because I've already contributed what I could contribute, I said. You know why, and I know why, and I think we both know that right now is not the right time to pretend otherwise. He said nothing for a moment. Then, you really aren't coming back, are you? It wasn't a question, quite. It was more like the moment when someone stops hoping and starts seeing the actual shape of a thing. No, I said, I'm not, he exhaled. Okay, he said, I get it. And here is the thing that surprised me. I believed him. I think he did get it. Not in a way that would translate into action or change or an apology, but in the way that someone who has always had the lights on suddenly understands in a small, quiet way what it means to sit in the dark. That was almost 3 years ago. My brother eventually sold the truck, took a loss, got a job at a restaurant supply company that, as far as I know, he has kept. My parents moved to a smaller house 2 suburbs over. My father's health has been a recurring issue. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to shift the household dynamics. My mother calls sometimes. The calls are short. She asks about my job. I give her the broad strokes. She talks about my father's medication or what the neighbor is doing to his lawn. We are civil. We are not close. That is not a tragedy. It's just the shape of the thing now. I started at Whitmore in June, and I've been there 3 years. The transit equity project I was brought in for turned into a 2-year engagement with the City Planning Commission. I was in a room last spring where a proposal I had worked on for 14 months got approved. Expanded bus routes in 3 underserved neighborhoods, better connections to job centers on the south side. When the vote went through, I sat very still for a few seconds because I had poured an enormous amount of myself into that work, and I wanted to feel it fully. I felt it fully. My apartment is not in Wicker Park anymore. I moved last year to a 2-bedroom in Logan Square. The second bedroom is an office with a drafting table and a wall of reference books and a cork board where I pin maps and project notes and occasional things that have nothing to do with work, a postcard from Dr. Town, Chowdhury sent from a conference in Portland, a note from Jesse that just says, "You did the thing." On my bookshelf is the photograph from my graduate school graduation in its silver frame. I am holding the diploma with both hands. I look like someone who worked very hard for something and got it. I look like myself. Last November, on a night when the wind was doing its particular Chicago thing and rattling the windows, I got a text from an unknown number. "Mom and Dad want to know if you're coming for Thanksgiving." They won't ask themselves, "Could you just come?" It would mean a lot. It was my brother. I looked at that message for a while. I thought about the cereal bowl I had eaten alone on my 18th birthday when they'd gone to my brother's soccer banquet and forgotten. I thought about the $400 a month and the 36 months and the email I had spent 2 hours composing to make sure the language was airtight. I thought about the side door and Jesse's SUV and the coffee in the cup holder. I typed back, "I hope you all have a good holiday. I won't make it this year." He replied with a thumbs up emoji. That was it. I made dinner. I had people coming over, Jesse and my coworker Dara and a man named Will, who had been in my life for about 8 months and who, when I told him this whole story on our 4th date, had listened without interrupting and then said, "That all makes sense? You responded reasonably to an unreasonable situation." I had not expected that response. I had expected sympathy or reassurance or something warmer and more performed. What he gave me was better. He just told me it made sense. He came over that November evening and helped me make pasta, and we ate it at the kitchen table under the low light, and outside the wind kept moving and the city kept going, and I was exactly where I had decided to be. There is a version of this story where I went back, where I softened, showed up for the truck launch, quietly stopped pushing about the money, and spent the next decade being the reasonable one, the one who absorbed, the one who managed, the one who made it easier for everyone else to not have to look directly at what had been done. I know that version. I could feel its pull. It wore the face of loyalty and the language of family, and it offered as its primary reward the comfort of not having to walk out a door without knowing what was on the other side. I chose the other side, not because I stopped loving them. I'm honestly not sure love is the right word for what I feel toward my parents. It's something more complicated, something that has the texture of love and the temperature of grief and the weight of 22 years spent hoping the next thing would be the time they saw me. But whatever it is, it doesn't require my presence in that house. It doesn't require me to make myself smaller. It doesn't require me to keep contributing to a fund that gets redirected every time my brother needs a runway. If you are reading this and you know what it is, to be the one who is expected to absorb, to give, to be reasonable, to wait, let me tell you what I know from the other side of the door. The cold air hits your face and it is extraordinary. You will feel it. The car will be there. And the sun comes up in the east every morning, whether anyone in your old house bothers to look or not. Hit like if you know what it means to finally choose yourself. If someone you love is still waiting for permission to leave, share this with them. You can subscribe here, and I will see you in the next one. I've thought a lot about what it actually takes to walk out a door when everything behind it is telling you to stay. Not the dramatic version of it, not the version with a speech and a slammed door and someone watching from the window with tears running down their face. The real version, which is quiet and terrifying in looks, from the outside, like almost nothing at all. What I know now is this. The moment I stopped waiting for my parents to see me was the moment I started becoming someone worth seeing. That's not a comfortable thing to admit, because it implies that I had some control all along, that the years I spent hoping and contributing and making myself useful to a household that treated me like a supporting character were years I could have spent differently. Maybe. But I also think I needed every one of those years to build what I eventually used to leave. The $11,000 didn't come from luck. The documented email chain didn't appear by accident. The contingency folder existed because some part of me had been quietly preparing for the moment I finally decided to use it. That's what I mean when I say I believe in cause and effect. Not in a mystical sense, not in the sense that the universe was arranging things on my behalf. I mean it in the plainest possible sense. The choices I made consistently over time created real options. Tutoring students while my brother slept in. Saving receipts when my parents said the money was a gift. Keeping Professor Chowdhury's email when she said call me if you need anything. Small decisions that felt insignificant in isolation and turned out to be the architecture of my escape. My brother spent those same years learning that effort was optional because someone would always catch him. I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because I watched what that cost him. He got the runway and he still crashed. Not because he was a bad person, but because he had never been allowed to learn what failure actually feels like and what it requires of you. My parents thought they were protecting him. They were preventing him from becoming capable. And in doing that, they also prevented themselves from ever knowing him, the real him, the one who might have figured things out on his own if they'd ever given him the chance. That's the other side of cause and effect that I keep coming back to. What we do for people out of fear versus what we do for them out of genuine belief in them. My parents gave my brother money because they were afraid of watching him struggle. They made my choices for me because they were afraid of what it would mean if I refused. None of it was love in any pure sense. It was anxiety wearing love's clothing. Renata told me once that the most important skill she ever learned was the ability to sit with discomfort long enough to understand what it was telling her. I think about that a lot. When I sat in my childhood bedroom looking at those glow-in-the-dark stars and felt the anger drain out of me and something colder take its place, that cold thing wasn't indifference. It was clarity. It was discomfort doing its job. Lena, the girl who ate cereal alone and filed every bank statement and wrote the tightest cover letters she could manage in a house that wasn't watching, turned out to be exactly the person the job required. That is not a coincidence. That is years of choosing intelligence over resentment, discipline over despair, and the slow, hard work of building something that belonged entirely to yourself. The door is still there. The cold air is still on the other side. You don't need anyone's permission to open it.